I'm going to get it started. Hi, I'm Valerie George, Vice President of Research and Development at John Paul Mitchell Systems and co-host of the new YouTube channel, The Chemist and the Colorist. I'm here today with my hair science bestie, Jenn Montoya. Hi, Jenn.
Hi, Val. I'm so excited about today's episode.
Today's episode number 4 on our YouTube channel of The Chemist and the Colorist, we talk about direct dyes versus oxidative dyes. I could talk about dyes all day, so I really loved seeing this episode come to fruition.
Me too. This is one of I think my favorite episodes so far, especially because we got into the lab. We got to do experiments. We got to put on the gear. Well, I got to. You always have that.
That's what
the fun of having the goggles, but it was so fun to be in the lab for the day and film it. So I think what's going to be most interesting about this episode is how you see those dyes come to life and what makes them work. And even with the direct dye, seeing how little you need in order to get that pigment, it was super fun to film that. So I hope our viewers like it as much as we did.
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about it, and some people are great listening. I'm a good auditory person. I could hear someone talk about something and boom, I have it. But I think a lot of people are visual learners. And what's cool is we talk about it early in the episode, and then later on we show everyone what the heck we were even talking about, which is pretty cool.
Agreed. I think hairdressers like to know how things work, and then we are visual people to see how something affects the hair after we've talked about it. The last 3 episodes in the series is really understanding hair from the inside out. And now we're getting into how color is going to be placed and what it does. So I think it'll be fun to talk about all of those different things and all the different types of classifications that we deal with in the salon. We have some great questions, so we'll be definitely answering those, but please feel free to answer or ask any questions live and we'll make sure to answer them. Also, if you have not seen this episode, it just launched today on YouTube. So please take some time and check it out and you'll get to see everything that we're talking about within that episode. So Val, I'm going to ask our first question. Let me get my little notebook. So tell me what semi-demi-permanent hair color will do to the hair. Where does it live? And also direct dye. So this is a question from one of our viewers.
Yeah, so semi-permanent and demi-permanent hair color is a term we use in the US to talk about the longevity of hair color. And as a chemist, I determine the longevity of hair color, or I determine what goes in it by longevity. So in the case of semi-permanent, it's something that is only going to last a handful of washes or a little bit more. And it's not typically using oxidative processes for the hair because you don't want to disrupt the hair barrier of the hair too much. You just want to deposit a little dye. And so in semi-permanent hair color, I'll typically use direct dyes. Direct dye is not a time, it's not a type of hair color. It's a type of dye that we would put into hair color, and we typically put it in semi-permanent hair color. Demi-permanent hair color lasts a little bit longer than semi, maybe up to 28 washes. I've seen 4 to 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks in terms of longevity. So you're not really lifting the dominant pigment too much. You're just putting a little bit of color down. So you still have some base to provide, but it's just a little bit fresher, more natural, more radiant looking for that time period. And in demi-permanent color, which again is a US term, in Europe, they typically don't use the term demi-permanent. It uses mostly oxidative dyes and then some direct dyes. So it's a little symphony of both to achieve that look depending on what the color is. And then of course you have permanent dyes, which are purely oxidative.
So going back to some of those demi-permanents where they have direct and oxidative dye combinations, is that why there's times when maybe if we're using a demi-permanent as a refinement, you see it develop quicker on the hair, it looks like it's working faster, or it sometimes can give the illusion that it's starting to process more quickly than maybe if you're using something that doesn't have the direct dye? So is
that just has to do with the reaction rate of dyes. In our episode, our viewers saw that if something has a direct dye, like you know it. For example, we have a color line called PM Shines, and we have a color called 6R Chianti within it. you know that has both oxidative and direct dyes because you have to add hydrogen peroxide. That makes it an oxidative dye, but it's also red the minute you pour it out of the bottle. So that can also give you a clue. But usually when you see color develop very quickly on the head, if it was color, kind of colorless or maybe just like yellow when you poured it out, but then it oxidizes very fast, that just has to do with the kinetics of the hair dyes.
Okay, that's good to know. I think that's a question we often get just as trainers.
Mhm.
If the stylist knows anything about direct dyes, they might feel that it's because of that. So it's good to
Mhm.
know. When it comes to more of the oxidative dye, how important is it to follow the directions and like measuring correctly and the actual act of measuring versus eyeing your developer?
Oh gosh, well, you could probably speak more experiential about this, but first of all, I'm a Virgo. Secondly, I'm a chemist, and I'm also of German descent. So I really like rules and manufacturer's instructions. And when I hear things, I'm like, I can't believe you guys did that. No, but I think it's very important because when I develop color in the lab, I'm not just eyeballing developer or eyeballing how many dyes I want to put in. I'm like measuring, right? So for me, the only way you can get a predictable outcome is to measure. If you want to eyeball it, that's cool. You can't expect predictable, reliable outcomes every time.
I agree. I'm the same. I'm not a Virgo, I'm a Cancer. However, I do like structure and I appreciate directions. And I
Yeah.
definitely feel from a chemistry point of view and color that you do need to measure. And one of my biggest troubleshooting questions I ask when something's not coming out right for people is, how did you measure? And I will tell you 9 out of 10 times I didn't. So it will definitely help be able to get you those results that you're looking for, especially when it comes to gray coverage. It keeps it consistent. So always remember to measure. I think we have a question in the chat.
Question, yeah.
Do you see that, Val? I have to just pull it up real quick.
Yeah, I'll read it for you.
Okay.
Cut and Loose asks, moisture seems to be the biggest challenge with multiple coloring. What can we do consistently to retain or give softer strands after coloring?
That's a good question. I think there's a few different things that you can try, but most importantly, it's how you do the service and facilitate that whole start to finish. I think one thing that's important and what we've learned from working with Val as colorist is to be able to shampoo out the oxidative dye and the hydrogen peroxide from the hair. Make sure that is clean and fresh from any process that's happened, because anything left behind could cause any dryness or just
reacting. Yep.
And it could actually cause issues if they're doing a double process in terms of you're doing a pre-toner to gain more of a creative color, or you're trying to achieve maybe more of those cool tones. So, and that in between is important too. I think another thing when it comes to doing services and multiple services on the head, or you have somebody that's coming in frequently, is choosing the right color for refresh. Do you have to pull through every single time? Maybe you don't, and that's where you can lean on more of a clear demi-permanent, like our Clear the Demi. That's a great option. And also I think it's important to consider what they are doing at home. What kind of water do they have? Water plays a big role, especially when people live in certain areas. So it could be a thing where you need to actually recommend certain take home for them to do clarifying in between their color services, and just being mindful of that. And also heat. Heat is always going to be, we need to educate always on temperature.
Yeah.
And the correct styling products. So making sure there's a buffer in there. We don't want a heat to be right on that. So there's a lot of components. I definitely think in the salon, don't pull through every time if it's not needed, but do an upgrade to a clear, so you're not losing those dollars. But then the other part of it is just making sure that you do the correct rinse out and shampoo and condition.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not having soft strands is a sign of damage that's been done to the hair. So as Jen said, do you have to do the service you usually do? Are you even using the right product? That's the other piece. A lot of people choose product based on how fast it bleaches and how fast it colors and the most lift. And that is great. It comes with the most damage. And then the other piece is the post care. making sure that you as the stylist start that post-care by using post-color shampoo, which has phenyl extract to stop any oxidation from continuing, as well as washing it out from the hair. And then if your guest is heat styling, I definitely recommend NeuroPrime. I never shut up about this product. It is so great. If we had, like, you know, Barnes and Noble, you walk in and there's a shelf and it's like, here's what, you know, the people who work at the bookstore recommend. Those are the books you buy because they're like typically the best, right? If we had a shelf like that at Paul Mitchell that were like the chemists with the display, I would put NeuroPrime up there like month after month. I wouldn't even change it. It would just be like a permanent fixture. Definitely great for heat styling.
Perfect. Thank you for the question. That was a great question.
Oh.
So next question, I think this is a good one. Can I dye without bleaching? And the answer is yes and no. It depends on your history as somebody who's coming in with color. So one thing to consider is if you are wanting to be quite bright or much brighter than what your natural color is, and natural meaning virgin, then you would need to go into more of using lightener to help achieve more of those 2 to 4 levels of lift. But if you're someone who has virgin hair and you just want some really subtle sun-kissed highlights that you don't want to have to use lightener for, your hairdresser would have to identify exactly how many levels of lift. But if you fit it within that criteria, a high lift would be a great option, or even a higher level would be able to be used to help achieve. Using a high lift or permanent hair color is going to be a great option due to you don't have to use lightener. You can get a toning effect to the hair in one fell swoop, where your formula will help control warmth if that's needed. When it comes to using lightener, this is a question I get all the time from my guests who they don't want to use lightener. They feel somewhere along the way they've read it's damaging to the hair, where I think if it's used properly, you can keep the hair quite safe and healthy. But if your hair has been previously colored and you want to go lighter, you must use lightener. Color doesn't lift color. Your hairdresser knows best. This is a rule of thumb in our industry. So if they're recommending and saying this to you in the salon, then just you have to trust that they have to use this in order to get there. What do you think, Val?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to have a totally different hair color, like if I wanted to have red highlights in my hair for some reason, obviously I'm a level 5 brown. I would have to lift the color out of my hair. And because I'm virgin, we could use a high lift for that, or you would know best, a higher lift, right? How many levels do I want to go? Or we could use lightener. But if I want to avoid both, I would have to just use deposit only color like the Demi or Crema XG. And again, that's like stained glass. Because I'm not lightening my natural pigment out, you're not going to really see a whole lot. So it just depends on what the look is, and the stylist will know best. I will say that color does do a little bit of lightening. That's what you're talking about, Jen, where it's like choosing how many levels of lift you want. And that's because of the ammonia and the hydrogen peroxide. They do a little bumping of the natural melanogen. It's not bleaching per se, like a persulfate lightener, but you are still getting some lightening. So I think it just comes down to expectation.
It does. And I think too, there's times where I might even have a virgin guest in my chair, their hair's never been touched, but based on what their needs are, even like Val, you just mentioned red, I sometimes need to get them a little bit lighter so I have more brightness to play with and allow that tone that they're wanting to be that much more vibrant. So it really is dependent on the person, but just know if you have previously colored hair, lightener is the way you have to go for that. So just keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. This is a good question. I think this is just good for conversation, but somebody wrote, I want to color my hair. How do I know what color is best? So I think that really is going to go into consultation with your stylist. Your consultation is really going to draw out all your expectations. You can have a conversation about exactly what you're looking for, what your goals are. Do you have inspiration pictures? What's the outgrow that you're looking to have? Do you even want to have something you want to maintain? So I think based on the answers to the questions that you receive from your hairdresser are going to be your journey of how you find what's going to work best for you. But just know that anything permanent will outgrow You will need to maintain it to a certain degree. Demi-permanent will fade out and give you something that you'll have a little bit more versatility. You can change your mind if you decide, I don't want to do that again. I'll just leave my hair as is, or I want to change it up. I want to add more. So it gives you a little bit more. It's like dating hair color instead of being permanent. And then semi-permanent is really just meant to live on the hair for a short period of time, such as, those fun colors that you think of. And we just had Halloween. I always think of the Halloween sprays I used to like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I used to be Jem from Jem and the Holograms, and I'd spray my hair like pink and different colors. I just dated myself, but that's okay. Jem's cool. Anything you want to add to that, Val?
No, it really just comes down to in terms of like, what's the best color for me? Yeah, it's about skin tone. It's about the type of makeup you wear, the clothes you wear. That's a part of it. But the other part is, how much do you want to maintain it?
Mm-hmm.
That's
number one.
A lot of people like looks, and then it's like, wow, you need to come back every 4 weeks to maintain that. And that's, for me, that absolutely would not work at all.
It doesn't work for me either. And I am a hairdresser. You should see my roots. They're kind of scary. All right. So as far as we hear lately about permanent toners, and I have my personal feelings about them as a colorist, and thinking about hair color and the hair that a toner goes onto and how it would genuinely be a permanent toner. But I think it's worth talking about, since we do get a lot of questions about blonding. This is a great topic for the classifications of different oxidative dyes and whatnot. So what are your feelings on pre-layed hair and permanent toners from a chemistry point of view?
From a chemistry point of view, I don't like the terminology in that the tone itself does not last. And that is due to the nature of what a toner is, which I'll get into in a second. I agree with the word permanent in the sense that it is an oxidative color that requires hydrogen peroxide, and it has ammonia. So I agree. To me, it's like a legal definition. Yes, this is a permanent toner, but the expectation is that it is permanent and remains on the hair for a long time. And I don't think that is true. And that is because when you tone the hair, you are applying, first of all, such a small amount of dye, okay? You don't want to over deposit, have too opaque of a look. So as a chemist, in these toners, you put very tiny amounts of dyes that just create like a really light, pretty stained glass over the hair. And in order to get that look, the dyes can't penetrate very far. When you tone, how much time are you toning for?
Depends on the person, but generally if they're a level 9, 10, anywhere from 2 minutes to 10 minutes, sometimes at the very most 15 if needed.
Yeah, as we talked in our episode, that's not a lot of time for the dyes to get into the hair. So for toners, they primarily live on the outside of the cortex, just under the cuticle, and those can wash out really easily. So I would say, even though it's in a permanent situation, meaning oxidative hair color with ammonia, it's not permanent as in you have to grow out and cut out your hair to get rid of the tone. It'll wash out pretty easily, just due to the small amount of dye that's in the tube, how it hasn't had a huge chance to penetrate in. The one advantage I think you get with permanent toners is the ammonia with the hydrogen peroxide helps brighten the hair while you're toning it, so you can get a little bit nicer of an appearance. Sometimes with like the silver hair looks, you need ammonia to bump out whatever natural pigment is there. So that's how I feel about them.
I agree. I think from my perspective, I do see a purpose for toner options when it comes to having ammonia, especially if I've done a classic foil weave and I want to break the base or give a shift to that natural canvas that I didn't place in foils to soften everything up and just give it a nice blend. I do use an ammonia base light or refinement for that, but I keep it exclusive to the base and the new growth where the hair is a little bit less porous through what's just been highlighted and then the natural. But when it comes to anywhere from that point down to the ends, I'll shift that formula to a demi-permanent with no ammonia. I just am a big believer in trying not to reintroduce more ammonia to pre-layered hair, just to
Very damaging.
help, just to help kind of let's get it onto a path of shiny, and that I'd like that cuticle to have as much flatness as I possibly can through just the whole coloring process and going back into conditioning and then eventually blow drying. So my blondes leave happy, healthy, and shiny. So for me, that's one reason I would choose an ammonia, but any other time, if I'm not worrying about shifting the base at all, then I always move into a true ammonia-free demi-permanent for that reason of, I feel like I get better results. The hair feels better. The expectation is equal to what I would expect from a permanent based on the knowledge that I have with colors. So I think it's just important to keep in mind, there are times where if somebody has a ton of dominant pigment where they're in the darker levels, such as reds, you see that red dominant pigment, meaning you're at a level 5, or red orange level 6, and getting up to that true level 7 with that orange dominant pigment, and it's strong, and you might need the most opacity you can possibly get, and you do feel you want to move into more of an ammonia base, and that's what you have in the salon, then I feel like the hair is a little bit in better shape at that point. But when you're at those higher levels, it tends to be a little bit more fragile and sensitive. So we just need to, always be the ones to take that into consideration and identify what the hair can handle.
Yeah, good question.
Great question. So our final question that I received from some questions that we've been getting asked is those color depositing conditioners that we see everywhere. Yeah. How do those work?
So color depositing conditioners fall into the semi-permanent dye category. And semi-permanent colorants use direct dyes, as we talked at the beginning of this live. And so direct colors don't necessarily penetrate into the hair. Sometimes they can, depending on which dye it is and what it's in. Is it in a shampoo, a conditioner, what else is going along with it? But they generally stick to the outside of the hair. The outside of the hair is negatively charged when it's damaged. And so the dyes that you put in are positively charged. Like Paula Abdul said, opposites attract like a magnet. And I used to love that song, and I still love the song. But anyway, opposites attract, and these positively charged dyes stick to the negatively charged hair. Some of the dyes don't have any charge, and they can go a little bit into the hair. And that's how these color depositing shampoos and conditioners work.
Awesome. I've gotten the question. I think it'd be worth just sharing the answer is, can you put oxidative dyes into a conditioner and make it for your guest to take home?
I don't recommend that because oxidative dyes are very regulated in how much you can have on the head and how they're being used. And, they're probably going to jump in the shower and rinse it out. And then all of that's running all down your skin. And I don't like that from a safety perspective. The less skin contact you have with hair color, the best. So I personally am not a fan of that. And I think oxidative hair color should be in a pretty controlled environment. That's my feeling.
Agreed. I believe that too.
Yeah.
We have one, I think saw something in the chat.
Yeah. Someone asks, I have watched all your episodes and love them. Thank you. How can I bring this information into a classroom setting? Your educational conversation is excellent.
I think that's a great question. And I thank you for wanting to even bring this into a classroom setting.
Oh, that's cool.
But I think maybe having the episodes be some home play, watching it on the front end before the actual training or the class that you're teaching, and being able to have some context on behalf of this. But even just from a training perspective, I like to bring a lot of this information in just in conversation and going through I think I really believe in fundamentals of hair and teaching from that very bare bones of hair chemistry and what is the hair, like what is it even doing. So even just bringing it from the beginning stages and then incrementally bringing it into more in-depth information will help kind of tie everything in. And I think the biggest thing is how do you tie this into every single day activities behind the chair? So if you can start relating it to everyday services that we do for color, it will start clicking and it will start connecting the dots, where I think that was the biggest thing for myself in my journey of hair. Is I knew things worked and I had my theories of why, but then really understanding that foundational reason changed everything for me, because now I can lead with that in conversation with my guests and have that be, I know the why, I'm going to explain the why to you. And then I always was the professional, just like a doctor. I listen to my doctor. You're the one that they're going to trust. They know that you know what you're talking about. So just relating it to everyday things that we do behind the chair. What do you think, Val?
Yeah, I think people, when they think about hair science, color chemistry, they're hearing these science, chemistry, and people immediately say, whoa, I wasn't good in science in school. And it's really not about that. It's about understanding some basic fundamentals of hair biology and how hair color works. And when you can apply the two together, it's pretty powerful. And you don't need to have a science degree to understand the information we're giving you. You need a cosmetology license, otherwise you're in big trouble for doing hair without one. But, really, like, all this stuff is within your ability. And when you can not only understand what we're saying and apply it, that's pretty cool. And doing it in bite-sized pieces, applying it, as Jenn said, to your everyday work, pretty soon it's going to be second nature to you.
Exactly. And I think you'll see these moments of clarity for the hairdressers that are in the classroom with you. That discussion comes through. And I think even asking that, and just being open and having an honest open mic with your class, and have you experienced these things? Have these things happen to you? And it's happened to all of us. That's how we get here. That's how we learn how to be better hairdressers. And even with working with Val, she learns things through her trial and error. We all do. So
definitely
it's normal.
Lots of years. Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's fun. And I think it's just knowing to me, knowing this type of knowledge too helps me reverse out of something if I'm able to understand the why. So it's very powerful.
Yeah. Jenn, I haven't been a very good host. We forgot to tell everyone, remind everyone, if they're just tuning in, why we're here.
True. I haven't been a great hostess with the mostest either, I suppose. But if you happen to tune in midway, we are just reviewing our episode 4 of The Chemist and the Colorist. I'm Jenn Montoya Palmore, and I work behind the chair as a hairdresser, and I'm also the colorist from The Colorist and the Chemist. And my partner here with this episode is Valerie George. She is the Vice President of Research and Development. And we just have become friends along the way, beginning our color conversations in the hallway of our Product Innovation Center, sipping coffee. So it's like our favorite thing to do. And now
favorite things, hair color and coffee. Yeah.
My coffee mug is over there. I can't reach it, but I usually have a coffee mug in my hand.
Yeah.
But we just love talking color, and it's always fun to do this. And now we have a bigger platform to help share this knowledge with hairdressers and help everybody become stronger with color and understand the why behind it. So
yeah. So as Jenn said, episode 4 just dropped today. We talk about direct dyes, oxidative dyes, and how they work in hair color. And on this episode, we actually got into the lab. So tune in, find it, watch. And if you have any things you'd like us to cover on future episodes of The Chemist and the Colorist, you can type them in the comments below, or you can just say nice things about us if you'd like. If you want to say not nice things, don't post them, because my mom said you should never do that. But yeah, anyway, you can type your questions in below. We can save them for future episodes, maybe do a frequently asked questions.
Yes, definitely. I love hearing from our people out there. That's what really helped shape these. And these first 4 episodes really were based on all the questions that Val and I get and our team gets. So this is for you. And we just want to be accessible to anything that you need to be better.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the time we have, everyone. Jenn, thanks so much.
Thanks, Val. It's always fun.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody.